Alrighty, good morning everybody and welcome to the wolfSSL live webinar, getting the least out of your application with wolfSSL and IAR Embedded Work Bench with IAR engineer Sean Prestridge and wolfSSL engineer Eric Blankenhorn. My name is Kajal Subkota and I will be moderating this webinar. All attendees will be in listen-only mode. And if you have any questions, please feel free to use the Q&A box or raise your hand to be unmuted if you would like to ask the question live, as we host a Q&A session following the presentation. The webinar will also be recorded and made available via our YouTube channel shortly after the presentation. Before we begin, I invite everyone to follow us on our socials at wolfSSL and at IAR, as well as feel free to email us at facts@wolfssl.com if you have any additional questions. And now I'd like to hand the presentation off to Sean.
Thank you so much, Kajal. Let me talk a little bit about our agenda for this talk, and you'll know where we're going. First of all, we're going to welcome you, obviously, as Kajal just did, and I'm going to give you a little bit more about myself, as will Eric. I'm going to start off by providing you an introduction to IAR Systems and explain who we are, what we're about, and the things that we can do to help enable and empower your embedded development. And I'm going to explain what we mean by more than an ordinary toolbox and explain how our tools can help you get to development much more quickly and, or I should say out to production much more quickly, and to make your development much more enjoyable. I'm going to do a very short demonstration of the embedded workbench with the same project that Eric will be using, but my intention is to kind of give you a quick cook's tour around the embedded workbench so you know where things are and can get started much more quickly. And then I'll hand it off to my colleague Eric, who will also do an introduction to wolfSSL and explain to you about the wolfCrypt library and give you a practical demonstration of what enabling a high-level compiler will do for the encryption operations that you need to perform in order to keep your devices safe. And then we'll finish up with a quick summary as well as a questions and answers session. So let me get started. My name is Sean Prestridge, and I am the U.S. Field Applications Engineering Team Manager for IAR Systems. I've been working for IAR Systems almost 13 years now, and before that, I was with Texas Instruments in the Educational and Productivity Solutions Group, which is a fancy euphemism for calculators. So I've been in the embedded industry for quite some time. It's been over 25 years, and it really makes me feel old to say that. But that's who I am, and I'm really happy to be joining you. IAR Systems is the premier tool chain and for helping develop not just on ARM-based devices, but over 40 different architectures, such as MSP 430, RISC-V, 8051, and pretty much any other architecture you care to name. We're the world's oldest embedded C compiler company, and we started in 1983 on the 8051 architecture. And as I mentioned, we've expanded to over 40 different ones. What we like to say is at least 30 times a day, you touch a product that was developed using the embedded workbench. So a lot of people don't realize that, but we do have a very large user base. And we've been around for quite some time. We've had several record years. So we're continuing to be very strong, and we'll be here for at least another 37 years, and we're happy to serve you. What we also like to say is that we're with our customers all the way from traditional embedded development, where you're just doing the normal test and fix life cycles. And typically what happens is that customers realize that, hey, I need to get better at my development practices because I need to get these products out to market much more quickly. And so to that end, they start caring about code quality and they start looking at code analysis tools. So we have analysis tools that are optional add-ons to our embedded workbench that can do both static analysis as well as dynamic analysis of your code, or what's also referred to as runtime analysis. For those customers that are also seeking functional safety certification because you're doing something in automotive or medical device or perhaps avionics, maybe industrial controls, we do have functional safety certified versions of our tools. And finally, usually the last step that people take is imbuing their devices with security. So we do have security from inception, and we work with lots of security partners such as wolfSSL to help enable customers to be able to do security very quickly and to make things happen as quickly as possible and deliver those safe and reliable products. So we are more than an ordinary toolbox, and I'll explain that a little bit more on these next slides. And let's see, sorry, I lost my mouse pointer there. We're the world's most widely used embedded tool chain. We have over 150,000 paying users worldwide. I mentioned the code analysis tools. They're called CStat and CRUN. We have complete support for the 32-bit ARM devices, as well as all of the Renesas cores, which interestingly enough, not even the Renesas compiler can claim to support all of their Renesas cores, but we do. I mentioned the functional safety version, which is TÜV-SÜD certified. And on the right-hand side, you can see our wheel that kind of shows the embedded workbench, compiler, assembler, linker, and debugger tool chain, and all the tools and enablement that goes around that, such as the debug and trace probes, the code analysis, functional safety certification, security protection enablement, as well as global technical support from one of our 12 offices around the world, including 3 inside of the United States. And we're also part of the RISC-V Foundation, so we're one of the leading and actually one of the few commercially available tools for RISC-V to enable people to look at that new core. So let's take a look at some of the challenges that could be facing a person when they're doing embedded development. Now, when you first start using the compiler, I'm going to go through some of this relatively quickly, simply because I want to show this to you in a demonstration, and Eric is going to really drive the point home when he does his demonstration. But we have multiple optimization levels for size as well as speed, and we also have the ability to do a balanced approach, which tries to give you the best bang for the buck, and I'm going to talk about that in just a second. We give you the capability of doing multi-file compilation. And what this means is it treats all of your source code as one monolithic piece of source code so that it gives the compiler ultimate visibility into everything that you're doing and can give you the best possible optimization. Currently in our C tool chains, we support C++ 17 as well as C18 in some of our tools. Some of our older tool chains support the C11 standard, but we do have C18 in our ARM-based tools, which are going to be the things that we demonstrate to you today. These are exceptionally well-tested tools. The commercial test suites that we test every release against are Plumhall, Perennial, and Dinkumware. And we also have a set of regression tests that have over 500,000 lines of C and C++ test code. And that's basically every problem that's ever been submitted against the embedded workbench throughout its 37-year history. We make sure that we do not break things that had previously been fixed. So it's an impressive set of regression tests simply because we've been around for a really, really long time. So as I mentioned, some of the challenges that face embedded engineers, there's 2 basic ways to look at optimization. And we're going to talk about some of the limits of optimization. And if you're going for size optimization, you obviously want to get the smallest possible code to execute. This is important because typically embedded devices don't have very much of a memory footprint. particularly if you're enabling security on your device. Then you have to have enough memory to be able to hold a code image as well as the executable image. And sometimes if you're super paranoid, you also want to have multiple code images and do A/B block switching. There's a lot of things that we could talk about in that case, but because security is becoming a bigger thing, size optimization is starting to make a little bit of a comeback, and people are really interested in getting the best optimization, or as we like to say in the clever title, getting the least out of your compiler. In other words, making it the smallest possible code or the shortest possible execution time. Now, with size optimization, when you can really crank down on the size of your application, it allows you to have more room to grow and do bug fixes, add more features. But the problem with size optimization is that it's typically antipodal to speed optimization. So very tight code tends to not be the fastest executing code. Now, on the opposite end of the spectrum, you have speed optimization and you get the fastest possible code, because nobody likes to wait on code to execute, particularly if that code is driving something like a graphical user interface. You don't want a laggy interface. You get better battery life with speed optimization, ironically, because you get your work done much faster, and then you can put your microcontroller into that ultra low power state in order to be able to conserve electricity. Typically, speed optimization, because it runs fast, gives you a very good first impression with the customers. You know, it's very snappy and responsive. But the problem with speed optimization is that it can make the code too big for the device that you've selected, especially given the things that we talked about with security, where perhaps you want to keep multiple copies of the code on your device, just to make sure that you don't get caught up. Now, if we look deeper into the optimization, sorry that the formatting got a little bit messed up here, but hopefully it's still readable. Some of the more common compiler optimizations that we have are common sub-expression elimination. That gives you a speed boost. As far as size, it's typically a wash. It doesn't typically give you smaller size. If you do loop unrolling, because one of the most expensive operations that you can perform in terms of execution speed, and ironically in power consumption too, is a test and branch. So that test and branch takes a lot of cycles, takes a lot of power. But if you do what's called loop unrolling, what you're doing is basically amortizing the cost of that test and branch. And instead of doing one operation and then a test and branch and then doing another operation, test and branch, what you're doing is, for example, doing 4 or 5 operations before you do a test and branch. So that is a speed optimization, but unfortunately, it also makes your size of your code go up. When you do function inlining, that's typically a speed optimization, and usually it makes the size of the code bigger as well, because basically what you're doing is pasting the guts of a function anywhere it's called. But maybe it's going to be bigger, maybe not. It depends upon the size of the function that you're actually inlining, but typically it is a little bit bigger. Code motion, where we move things around, gives you a higher speed optimization. It typically does nothing to size. So if, for example, in a for loop, you're doing an assignment and then you do a calculation, and we determine that the assignment actually has nothing to do with the calculation, we may hoist that assignment out of the for loop in order to make that for loop execute faster. So that's what we mean by code motion. Also, dead code elimination. It typically doesn't have much of effect on speed, but it does have an effect on size, where it drastically reduces it. Static clustering.
Hey guys, I think Sean lost his audio for right now, so we're gonna wait a few moments for him to get it back.
See what, if you want, we can go ahead and jump over to the company introduction, which is coming up real soon for wolfSSL.
Yeah, absolutely.
Great.
Alrighty, hi everyone. My name is Kajal again. wolfSSL was founded in 2004 by Todd Auska and Larry Stefanik when they realized there wasn't an open source, dual licensed embedded SSL library available. OpenSSL existed at the time, but there was a demand for an alternative that was easily portable, smaller, faster, available under a clear commercial license, was equipped with a clean and modern API, and offered commercial-style developer support. wolfSSL was born into this market need with an open SSL compatibility layer. Today, wolfSSL secures over 2 billion connections. We have more than 1,000 OEM customers and dozens of resellers. wolfSSL is made up of almost 40 dedicated employees as of 2020, most of which are engineers. This process is of course supported by a strong partner network that we're very proud of, which includes STMicro, Curl, and IAR. Since the beginning, our engineering team has developed several embedded security products, including wolfCrypt with DO178 support, FIPS certification, and a FIPS ready offering, MQTT up to the version 5 specifications, SSH v2, TPM 2.0, and a secure bootloader known as wolfboot, as well as Java wrappers and JSSC support, and commercial support for Curl. All of these offerings are accompanied by a thorough maintenance and support plan up to the 24/7 level. We also offer full service consulting. And now I'm going to hand it over to Eric.
Hey, thanks, Kajal. So I'm Eric Blankenhorn. I'm an engineer here at wolfSSL. I've been with the company a few years now, and primarily in development. I've worked on the MQTT library. So I'm going to tell you a little bit today more about the wolfSSL product. So let's take a closer look at some of the benefits and features of wolfSSL. So wolfSSL is consistently smaller than OpenSSL. wolfSSL is focused on providing a lightweight solution that can be used by resource-constrained devices. So testing at wolfSSL could fill up a whole webinar by itself, and in fact, it has. You can look it up. wolfSSL support is available to help everyone. Just send us a message over at our support chat, and we'll help you out, whether it's getting started building or more detailed questions about your security setup. wolfCrypt can be optimized for environments such as that require a small footprint or even a tight RAM availability. So a little more about wolfCrypt. It's our cryptography library. It provides support for a wide array of cryptographic operations and algorithms, including hashing functions, block and stream ciphers, authenticated ciphers, public key operations, and password-based key derivation. These are utilized by wolfSSL to establish secure TLS and SSL connections, and by other products to encrypt, decrypt, and authenticate data. So the benchmarking application. So that's kind of our measure for how lots of customers want to come in and see how fast their product's going to be with and without encryption. It's usually kind of a stumbling block. And so benchmarking provides a way for people to see what the impact is going to be. So our application is a quick way to measure the performance of wolfCrypt on a platform. In some environments that support auto tools like Linux, it's easily executed from the command line. It can be configured to measure particular algorithms, and there's lots of other options also. In some other environments, it can be executed from the main application as a function built into the library, which is what we're going to actually do today. So now I'm going to switch over to IAR Embedded Work Bench for ARM. And from there, we're going to walk you through building the benchmarking application. So here I've got IAR running, and you can see that I've got a wolfSSL workspace brought up. This is the same workspace that you can go and download from our GitHub page. It's one of the examples that we provide. This is the library proper. You can see we've got all of our SSL, TLS in that folder. We've got all our crypto algorithms in another folder. And so I'm going to step you through and show you exactly what options we're running. So this demonstration is going to basically show the benefits of using IAR's compiler optimization with our wolfCrypt crypto library. So I've loaded up the workspace, and so today we're going to actually run it on hardware. It's going to be the EKRA6M3 from Renesas. Although this chipset does support hardware encryption, today we're only running our software encryption in the library. We'll be connecting to the board using IAR's iJet probe. You'll notice that there's a couple projects there. There's the library, and that has this TLS and the wolfCrypt code. And then up here, there's also the benchmark application itself. So let's go ahead and look at the options real quick again. So right now I've got it set up for no optimization. This is going to give you kind of a baseline. And so we're going to do a quick rebuild here. And you can see that it's running pretty quickly through there. We've got a couple warnings about not setting up the random number generator. And that's okay, because this is just a demonstration product. So make sure we've got none set for the application as well. And we're going to rebuild this guy. Great. So now let's see how bad it messes up in a live demonstration. Yeah, should be fine. So we're going to flash it down to the hardware. Looks good. Again, this is using the IAR iJet probe. So you notice it's running pretty quickly. It's great. It's a fun tool to use. So everything's loaded up, and we're going to hit go. So down here in the terminal IO window, you can see that we're getting results. So this is just kind of the throughput measurements of some of the software encryption. I think ones that we can look at to start out with are going to be the AES. So basically, you can kind of tell that it's running all under 200 kilobits per second, or kilobytes per second, excuse me. So for the CBCs, the AES GCM, those are all under 70 kilobytes per second. So not the best performance there. Some more common ones, so like the ECC down here, we're working at about 737 milliseconds per operation. So let's see if we can make this better. So let's crank things up a little bit. Go ahead and quit that. So now we're going to go in and change our optimization level up to high. We're going to keep it with the speed because we're actually looking to change those benchmark performance. So obviously, like Sean was saying earlier, depending on what your use case is, you may want to go through and optimize these a little differently. But today we're just going to go for raw throughput changes. So that's the library. Go ahead and do a rebuild here. And again, very quick compiler. It's been very easy to use. And again, these examples are all out there on our GitHub page if you want to go out and check it out for yourself. I think by default, it uses the simulator. So even if you don't have hardware, you can go out and test it out. So after that compile completes on the library, we're going to go through and set it up for the benchmark application also. All right, do a rebuild. So you'll notice that it's using the Renaissance FSP also. So that's also available, and there are instructions for setting that all up and running. So we got a clean build now. We're going to rerun it. Great. So hit go and wham, amazing. You can see that those increases are significant. We've basically doubled the throughput just simply by using optimization from the compiler. Those previously, those AES CBC values were under 200 kilobytes per second. Now they're all up over 400, some even into the 500 range. The Diffie-Hellman, which was down around under nearly 700 milliseconds per operation. Those are down around 360 range. So amazing performance improvement, simple as enabling some options in the compiler settings. So even without hardware acceleration, the right embedded tools and the right crypto library can provide the results you need for your application. So I'm going to switch back over to our presentation now. And Sean, did we get you back on yet?
Well, let's see. Can you hear me?
Hey, we can hear you now.
Hey, at least you know this was a live demo.
That's right. Yeah, absolutely. So Sean, did you want to put up your demonstration or should we move
Well,
on?
actually, I think you covered most of it. What I was just going to do is kind of show some of the different features of the IDE, but I think you covered a lot of the really important stuff with the optimization. But there are, as you probably saw from that project options, a lot of different areas where you can noodle with settings. And we do have an IAR Academy that teaches you how to get the best possible optimization. We teach you methods for choosing size optimization where you, or actually I should say, choosing speed optimization where speed is paramount, and basically choosing size optimization everywhere else. So we give you the capability of picking the optimization level, not just at the global project setting, but you can also do it on groups of files or an individual file, or even down to an individual function if you want to, in order to give you complete granularity and control over how the optimizations are applied. And Eric showed some of the different transformations that can be enabled. You can choose which ones have the best effect on your code and what you feel is most important. And I think for this demonstration, that was the big thing. And of course, you were rebuilding the library as well as going back to the application. So you showed how in our workspace files, the highest, which is the highest level, you can have multiple projects contained within it and switch back and forth easily. So I think you did all my hard work for me.
Great, excellent. Well, I think we can move on to the summary then. So
Yes. So, as I mentioned, we do provide more than an ordinary toolbox. We do have tools that are functional safety certified. And Eric has demonstrated our CSPI software debugger, which can interface with the hardware debugger of your choice. But as Eric alluded to, when you marry it with the IAR iJet debugger, you get very fast communications with the board, 60 megahertz SWO. You get a lot of capabilities such as power debugging. That's another topic that we didn't have time to go into, but we can also do cool demonstrations where you can see the power consumption of the microcontroller going up as it's doing its encryption, and how it drops back down once it finishes. So it helps you to visualize how much power is being consumed by your application, which is particularly important if you are battery driven, or if you want to do green engineering and you want to minimize the power footprint of your your application. We do have static analysis tools as well as runtime analysis tools. If you're interested in that, you can get in touch with me and I'll be happy to show you some quick videos that we've done on that, as well as do a one-on-one demonstration with you and your team. You can just email me at sean@iar.com. So that's SHAWN@IAR.com. But what it boils down to is we have a unique set of tools for implementing and customizing security, and we enable customers to use high-powered security products such as that's provided by wolfSSL. And it works on a lot of different devices, and it's a great partnership we have, and we're really happy to bring this webinar to you. And I'll let Eric summarize his position.
Yeah, sure. So wolfSSL, like we talked about earlier, offers a dual license TLS stack cryptography library, along with a suite of products that utilize the wolfSSL and wolfCrypt libraries. So everything from MQTT to SSH to a secure bootloader. Those are all products that we offer that utilize the cryptography library. We also have a GO178A certified solution, and we do a ton of FIP certification solutions for customers. So that's another place where we can definitely help you out. As we mentioned, we use a hardware crypto solutions all the time. We didn't use that today because we were trying to demonstrate the benefits of the compiler, but as we mentioned, those are all available. So I think it was great talking to everybody today, and I think we'll turn it over for questions.
Yeah, we've got a couple of questions here. Again, feel free to use the Q&A box, or if you would like to ask the questions live, you can also raise your hand, and we'd love to, I guess, allow you to talk. And Nick, I'm going to unmute you over here. Hey, what's your question, Nick?
Maybe Nick's having the same audio problems I was earlier.
Oh, sorry. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. I wanted to know what crystal frequency did the benchmark demo target processor use?
So that was 120 megahertz processor. I believe that's where we were at. I'll have to double check with that, dig through the FSP to make sure, but that's what we're targeting.
Okay. And also, while you're checking that, I wondered what the memory footprint was for both RAM and flash.
Yeah, that's a great question. I didn't actually dig those up beforehand, but in general, with just the for a couple of crypto algorithms and a full TLS stack, you're looking at sub 20K just for the library portion. Yeah.
Okay, and that executes out of flash?
Yeah.
Okay, I think that answers it. Thanks.
Cool.
Thank you. We have a question here, which is for their platform, they need a 100 millisecond max latency. Does wolfSSL support that in TLS 1.3?
So I guess there's a pretty specific question. So it's going to have a lot to do with what hardware you're running. Are you running a full desktop environment, OS support? So there's a couple of gotchas there that I can't really give you a plain yes or no answer. But I would invite you to contact us at support@wolfSSL.com or facts, FACTS, @wolfSSL.com.
Awesome. How is wolfSSL better than Polar SSL and Embedded TLS?
Well, of course we're better. Yeah. So
because you have wonderful people like Kajal and Eric. I mean,
exactly.
That right there is enough.
But no, seriously, the license, everything from licensing to support to optimization to and I'll go back to support. That's another huge one that people often overlook until they're in the midst of a crisis with their application. We really do have the best support out there, and I'm going to lean on that.
Yeah, also actually have spec sheets on our website at wolfSSL.com, specifically comparing wolfSSL to Embed TLS, which you can go on to and like check out on our documents tab.
And if I could just weigh in, I have talked to customers that have looked at Embed TLS versus wolfSSL, and one of the things they really like about wolfSSL is the fact that they can pick up the phone and talk to somebody like Eric and do a Zoom meeting with them and do screen sharing where they can actually walk through the application and get personalized, customized help. And frankly, that level of support is just invaluable. It's the same level of support that IAR Systems tries to give to our customers. So, it is truly incredibly helpful when you can get that type of help as quickly and when you need it.
Great. Thanks, Sean.
Awesome. Do you guys have any size information as part of the benchmark utility?
So it doesn't by default print out runtime size, but there are a couple of build flags that you can use in addition to just your normal application size that's supported in your tools. So it's not something that we spend a lot of time trying to rebuild, as it's usually part of the tools already.
Does wolfSSL have support for 16-bit processors?
So it's kind of an asterisk on that answer. So yes, we can run 16-bit. It's kind of limits you on support for some of the math operations, and that's going to be the bottleneck when you start trying to do large number, big number math on 16-bit processors. And there's a lot of background work that has to happen.
Yeah, and I think it would probably also depend upon which specific 16-bit processor you're talking about.
That's
is it an
exactly
MSP
right.
430? Is it on an RL78? Because some of the devices like the MSP 430 are extremely resource constrained and very small devices. So when you move, as Eric was alluding to with the mathematics, when you move to a 16-bit microcontroller, the mathematics libraries actually get larger. So the question is, can you fit it all into the footprint of the device that you're using? So it's a bit fiddly. So I like his answer of yes
So
with
yes,
an asterisk.
yeah, that's exactly right.
Awesome. Is it true that highly optimized code is harder to debug?
Ooh, that's a great question. That is true because what happens in a very highly optimizing compiler is that it will move certain sections of code around to where the debugger doesn't even see that the code actually exists at that spot anymore. So typically what we tell customers to do is to debug their application at low or medium optimization. And then when they're satisfied that the application is running correctly, then crank up the optimization. Now, some people have the notion that turning on high optimization introduces bugs in your code, but as we like to say, only correct code gets optimized correctly. One of the problems, though, when you crank up with high optimization is that the compiler gets really picky about the C and C++ language semantics. So it will assume certain things based upon how the language spec is written. And if your code doesn't conform to those specifications very tightly, you can wind up having weird side effects. However, what we like to tell customers is that if your code isn't running at high levels of optimization, try backing off to medium or low optimization and see if the code works. And if it does, then send us a disassembly of your snippet of code with medium optimization as well as high optimization, and we can take a look at it. And almost invariably, it comes back from our developers saying, this isn't a bug because you wrote the code this way, so we assume this because the C language spec says this. But if you'll rewrite that section of code like this, it will optimize the way that you expect. And so then you get to learn something, some of the dark corners of the C language semantic that perhaps you never knew before, in order to make your code better tested and better optimized. Because we like to say, if your code can run at high optimization, it's better tested, and you can be assured that it conforms to the language specifications. So yeah, it is hard to debug at a high level of optimization. So we recommend running at low or medium optimization for debugging, and then cranking up the optimization and seeing if the code still runs correctly and passes all your tests. And if not, take those things that I told you about and get back in touch with us, and we'll help you take a look at your code base and make sure that it's conforming to the C language spec.
Okay, awesome. And are there recommended practices or ways to write code so that the compiler can better optimize it?
That's actually a really good question too. We have sometimes seen customers that try to combine multiple lines of source code into a single line of source, thinking that that's more efficient. And the problem is that when you do that, you tend to start triggering those dark corners of the language semantic or the language specification, as I said. So we really recommend writing your code in a more linear fashion, like one line does one thing. And if you do that, it adds to the length of the source code, but it has a knock-on effect. It makes the compiler able to understand your code much more clearly. The heuristics are clearer, and so it can make better decisions about how to optimize the code. But it also has a salubrious effect on code reviews, because anyone who's reviewing your code can actually understand what your code is trying to do. When you start combining multiple lines of code into a single line of source, it can be very difficult to read. Particularly if you have customers that tend to write what they self-style as self-documenting code. I think that's like the unicorn in the embedded industry. I hear about it all the time. I've never actually seen it. So, sometimes they write code and it doesn't have very good comments, and it's left to the reader to try to figure out, well, what is this line of code actually doing? But if you write it in a true linear fashion, it's much easier for someone to understand. And if they understand it, they're going to give you much better feedback on the security of your code, as well as how you might be able to optimize it or do things better. But if the code is very abstruse and recondite, where it's difficult to understand, you just don't get a higher quality of review. And frankly, the compiler tends to not do as good a job optimizing it, because you can get into those weird corners of the language. So that's sorry for the long-winded answer, but that's a great question.
Excellent.
Yeah, thank you. I have a question here for Rod, who is one of our business directors. Can you give us a ballpark figure for pricing and terms, for example, support duration for our commercial wolfSSL product?
Sure. Hi. Yeah. So the majority of our customers enjoy a royalty-free perpetual license for an end product. So the pricing starts at 5,000 US dollars per SKU. And then pricing can scale to what we call a product line license, which is 25,000 US dollars. Again, that's royalty-free. That's a perpetual license. And if anyone has any questions, real specific to pricing and want to work with us, we're happy to engage. We want to be easy to work with.
Awesome. Thank you, Rod. And for better latency, do you recommend TLS 1.3 or DTLS?
Yeah, I'll grab that one, Derek. So I think that's really going to be more of a application and hardware specific, and your network, obviously. So if you're capable of running TCP, TLS 1.3 is going to be a better solution. A lot of devices or networks are going to be forced to be on UDP, and of course, then you're going to be limited to DTLS. So that was a pretty easy one.
Fantastic. And I think that was our last question. I just want to thank everyone for joining our webinar. Thank you to the fantastic panelists. I don't know what happened there. Eric, Sean, Raphael, and Rod. As a reminder to everyone, this webinar is recorded and will be made available via our YouTube channel, so look out for an email. And I invite everyone to follow us on Twitter at wolfSSL and at IAR. Thank you and have a nice day.
Excellent. Bye.